Alright, before you jump into these next series of lectures within this section, download the exercise file that's attached to this lecture. I've got it open in front of you right now. It's called 08 Word Page Layout Techniques. It's a .docx file. So download it and then start up the next lecture. But make sure you do that first. It's going to be the file that I'm going to use throughout the remainder of this section right here, talking about page layout techniques. Same file, we'll use it for all the videos. So download it and then jump into the next lecture. See you there. There are loads of defaults found inside of a Microsoft Word document. We're going to take a look at one of them right here, and a very important default that we want to make a change to. This is the Word document margins. So as first, before we start talking about manipulating the margins and setting them to what we need for your document or what you would like, let's take a look at what the defaults are for the margins. So open in front of you, I've got the example file that was in the previous lecture. It's 08 Word Page Layout Techniques right there. So if you haven't downloaded it already, make sure you download that file. That's the one I'm going to be using. I'm going to go over into the Page Layout tab. Earlier, we were spending quite a bit of time on the Home tab. Let's switch gears a little bit, get to the Page Layout. On Page Layout, you're going to find Margins. It's going to be the first option on there. So I'm going to go ahead and go into Margins. You're going to find that there are several preset margins, but the default margins for any brand new Word document that you open up is set right here. It's set to what's called normal. So there's a 1-inch left margin, there's a 1-inch right margin, and then there's also a 1-inch top and bottom margin. Now if you're unclear as to the margins themselves, now keep in mind, back of your head, this is 1 inches. The margins is that empty white space, right, that takes place on the sides of your page typically. That's typically where we think your margin's at. So we got 1 inch on either side. Quite a bit of white space going on in there. And then we've also got some space along the top of that document. That's your top margin. And then if I scroll down inside of my page, get to the bottom of a page, we've also got that space down below as well, that 1 inch bottom margin. Now the left and right margin, that's what we typically think of as the margins, but top and bottom, that's reserved for things like your header and footer. So you can place things like the title of your document, your page numbers, a date, whatever you want to put inside that footer or that header. We'll talk about those in a video shortly, a few videos from here. So margins, just keep in mind you got 1 inch all the way around that piece of paper, empty white space. Now I want to be able to manipulate that margin, perhaps give myself some more space on the screen, so I'm going to bring those margins out, limit from a 1 inch to maybe 3/4 of an inch or 1/2 inch, or we don't want to go too narrow. Now, a lot of your standard DeskJet printers, the ones sitting next to your computer perhaps, don't print absolutely close to the edge of the page. So you do want to be careful of that, not to make them too narrow. Okay? Or I want to bring them in. Perhaps I want to bring both sides in, or maybe I just want to bring one side in of the page, okay? and start to manipulate those margins. So let's take a look at this. We got a few ways you can do it. I can go back to Page Layout, I can go into Margins, and I can pick one of the presets in here. Here we're going from 1 inch, let's go down to 1/2 inch, so let's cut it in half. This is called narrow. So I'll give that a click, and you can see what happened to the edges of the page. I've now gone down to 1/2 inch in all of those directions that we were looking at earlier. So once again, giving myself a little bit more space on the page. Now let's also look down here, because this is very important. I can see that currently with these margins, narrow margins, 1/2 inch in each direction, that I've got 2 pages, page 1 of 2. I've got 2 pages within this document. Let's go back to margins, and I'm going to set it to the normal, back to that 1 inch margin in all directions. Again, much wider space in there. But look at that. I'm at 3 pages. So again, based on your margins, how narrow, how much you bring those out, or how much you bring them in, okay, really dictates a couple of things. One of them being, how many pages do you have within that document? Because it's either stretching the amount of content right across more pages because you've brought those margins in, or you've brought them out, then you can fit more on a single page. Okay? So all I'm doing here is going up to the Page Layout, to margins, and I can pick one of these defaults. Now, if you want to custom your margins, I know the exact margins, the inches that I need on the sides and top and bottom of my page. Well, you can do this one of a couple ways. I can go back to margins, and down at the bottom I got custom margins. Then in here, this opens up my page setup tab where I can set up my top, left, bottom, and right margins, and I just type in a value. Let's say I want to leave top and bottom at 1 inch because I want to put things like my header at the top, logo, document name, whatever, and down at the bottom I want things like the page number and confidential and maybe my name or whatever else I want to put on there. So I'll leave quite a bit of space on those two areas. But left and right, I want to make those 1/2 inch each. So I'll just say 0.5 for left, 0.5 for right. I'm going to hit OK. Now I've still got all that space up above, but I've got margins pushed out, giving myself a little bit more space on that page. Now I'm still at 3 pages. If I scroll down, let's look through this. There's page 2, there's page 3. So I got roughly 3 paragraphs on that last page. Now if I've been asked, hey, you know what, you got to get all this to fit on a single page, I could try messing around with the margins a little bit more. There might be other techniques that I could use as well, but margins being one of them. Now one last method here to be able to manipulate your margins. Again, page layout, margins, you got the presets. They just come with Word. You've got the ability to customize your margins, type in the values you need. You've also got this third option where you can come up to your rulers. And I can start to manipulate the margin here. Now, if your ruler is not turned on, okay, for some reason it's not there, just go up to your View tab, top of your screen, View, then you'll find an option for ruler. You can activate it right there or turn it off if you really don't need it. But for now, I do want it. So on the ruler, I've got these little, what looks like kind of triangles in this little box. I got a triangle over here as well. But if I move into there, and it's kind of finicky. You may not get it your first time going in there, and I may not even get it the second time. But I'm looking for, when I hover my mouse over there, a double-headed arrow, kind of east and west arrow here, left and right. Once I find that, I can left-click and drag, and I can manipulate that margin. Maybe I just want to bring it in a couple inches here. Let's go right about there. There's 2 inches worth of margin space now on my left-hand side. Bringing that document in, still got 1/2 inch over here. I'm not going to manipulate that side, but I've got 2 inches here. And I see this quite a bit when people are creating documents that they want to take notes within. And I've left this nice thick margin over here on the left for people to leave notes and revision notes and so on right there. But a couple different ways for you to manipulate your margins and really change the structure and layout of your document by doing so. Remember, it's page layout, margins. You got the presets, you got the customized option, and you got the ruler that you can activate and start to manipulate the margins from there. So try this out. Get that document and just mess around with the margins. Think about how many pages you need on there, how much content you want to fit on a single page, and go from there. So margins are only one part of manipulating the layout of a page. You're just bringing those margins in, or you're taking them out, left and right, top and bottom. Now, I want to talk about another technique that we have here called columns. This is pretty prevalent in magazines and newspapers. I want to be able to create columns of content. Let me draw on the screen here for just a moment. Let's imagine that this is my page. This is my Microsoft Word page. Now, right now, all of your content is just kind of fitting right into those margins, whatever your margins are set at. Got a block of text, images, tables, whatever else you got out there. Got all your content in there. Now, what I'd like to do is I want to be able to take all that text content that I placed into my document, and I want to be able to break it up into multiple columns. Perhaps I want 2 columns, 3 columns, 4 columns, whatever. Get away from that one column setup, which you get by default. You do have a single column in there just within those margins. But now I want to be able to create a nice layout with various columns. Now we'll have text that starts up here, right? And then makes its way down that column. If we have a continuation of text beyond that column, we then want it to wrap up into the next column and continue down. This is a really neat technique to be able to create a more dynamic layout of documents. And it's really simple to do though. Take a look. So I can jump into my document. All I need to do is go up to my page layout tab. I'm going to find columns. It's in the same area we found margins in the earlier lecture. So I'd go to columns, and they've got a bunch of presets. Say I want 2 columns. I'm going to go ahead and grab 2. And now I've taken my document, got 3 pages worth of content here, and I've broken it up across 2 columns. If I scroll through, there's my first page. Columns continue down my second page and into my third page. Third page doesn't have enough content to go into that second column. Great, no big deal. It knows to stop, but I've still got my content structured inside of columns. Now, I do have a few other options in there. Remember, this was underneath page layout, and I got columns. If I hop back into there, I do have 1 column, which is default, 2, 3 columns. I can tell it to be smaller on the left or smaller on the right. Let's just try it. I'll say, let's go left. So now I got a nice little smaller column here on the left, got a much larger column on the right, and I can reverse that with the right option. Let's go back to 2. If I get back in there, you also have more columns. If I go into more columns, this opens up a window where you got several other options. So I got the same 1, 2, and 3 and left and right options there. I can also specify how many columns I'd like. Rather than picking from the presets, you do what you like. I can set up a line between the columns. For me personally, I like to do this. Any way that I'm going to help make my document more readable, the better off it's going to be. So I can say line between. I'm going to hit OK. And this is going to apply a line between all of those columns. And it just creates a little more structure, a little more separation between the 2 columns. Me personally, once again, I like that feature. Continuing the discussion of page layout techniques, we've got margins you can manipulate, you got columns you can bring in there to create some more dynamic layouts. Now I want to talk about page breaks. Now before I really dive into page breaks, I want to undo what I did in the previous lecture about columns. And then we're going to come back to columns. We're going to kind of bring columns and page breaks and marry them together. But before we do that, let's remove the columns that we do have in there. Up towards the top left corner of your screen, you have what's called your quick access toolbar. And on there, I've got an undo button. Perhaps one of my favorite features inside in any application I work in. I want to be able to undo stuff that I do by accident. So here I can hit that little blue arrow. Let's undo that column. I undid the line there. Let's undo again. Go undo, undo. Let's get a few of these undos out of there. Let's just get back to just a standard document again. There we go. Shortcut key. Control Z, Z like zebra, will be giving you your undo command. Alright, so I've gotten rid of the columns in there. Now I want to talk about page breaks. Inside of Microsoft Word, page breaks happen naturally. You fill up a page, you hit that bottom margin. Remember, you got that 1-inch margin there at the bottom of the document by default. Well, you reach the bottom of that page, and Microsoft Word will automatically create a new page. It'll break your content to the next page. Makes sense, right? Well, occasionally you want to prematurely cause a page break of your own. Perhaps you've got a large document that's got multiple sections. I want to be able to have one section that's maybe spans 4 pages, and rather than swapping or changing to the next section on a page that talks about the previous section, I want to break to a whole new page, give me a clean slate, brand new page, and start that new section. This deals with page breaks. So let's imagine this. Here's back to page 1 here. I've got a topic there, fun with videos, and then I got working with images, and let's see if I keep going, and then there's more options in Word. So I've got 3 topics happening here on the first page. Maybe I want to create, or I want to keep fun with videos and working with images. I want to leave that on one page. Page 1, great, let's keep that. But more Word options, this third header here, I want that to go to a whole new page, all by itself. I'm going to insert a page break. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click right just to the left of more options in Word, just to the left of that header. Get my insertion point right there. Now I can go up to my page layout tab and I can go into breaks. Now page breaks, the one I'm about to use here, is just one of a handful of different types of breaks you can insert into a document. And it's perhaps one of the more standard, more common ones. So I'll go to breaks and I'm going to do a page break. So page, mark the point at which one page ends and the next page begins. Remember, I did that. So I placed my mark right there. I'm going to go to breaks and I'm going to do a page break. And it's now broke the page. You can see here at the bottom, more options in Word is now been pushed to the next page and leaving this empty spot right here. So again, you got larger documents. You want to cause one section to be separated from another section, or one form of content from another section. Cause a page break. I'm going to undo that, Control Z. So remember, I just place where I want to mark the page break. Go to page layout, breaks, and choose my page break. Does it for me. Let me undo that one more time. Here's a shortcut key for you, and this is the one that I use the most of. I don't typically go to page layout and breaks and pick my break. I just place my cursor where I want to break it. On my keyboard, I'm going to press Control Enter, and that'll cause a page break. Control Enter. Same thing as going page layout, breaks, page layout, page break. Just Control Enter gets the job done for you. And just to show off, if you go to Home, you can turn back on your paragraph markings. And you can see that it shows you where that page break was at. There it is. Let me try one more just for fun. I'm going to scroll down here. Let's say, oh, are you still reading this? I'm going to put that on its own page. So I place my cursor there, Control Enter, drops it down to the next page. I've now caused a page break. It's that simple. Really, really efficient to use, a neat technique. Create different sections of your document, maybe even different chapters of a book. Makes sense, right? Break it into another page. Try it out. Get back into the Word page layout techniques doc and insert some page breaks. Just get a feel for it. Go wild with it. Just get a feel for inserting page breaks. In the previous 2 lectures, we talked about page breaks and we talked about columns. Now I want to take the 2 of those features and marry them together. And we're going to create much more dynamic layouts within your Microsoft Word documents. Take a look. So I've still got the Word page layout techniques document open. And I've got my page breaks that I created earlier, just a couple of them. You got one there from the first page, keeping those 2 groupings together. There's my more options in Word. Then I did another page break, and there's the rest of my content. Now, I want to put columns inside of this document. But you'll recall, when I put columns in here earlier, let me just click somewhere. I'm going to go back to page layout, columns, and I'm going to throw 2 columns into my document. There it is. Really quick, really simple, and a much more dynamic layout to the and structure to my content. But it put columns throughout my entire document, which maybe that's what I needed, that's what I wanted. But what I'd like to do here is I just want columns in specific areas or sections of the document. I don't want columns throughout. I want to put columns up here on the first page, get these 2 guys inside of columns. More options in Word, I want to put that just regular, just fill the page, no columns. And then maybe I want to switch back to columns at the end of the document. I want to pick and choose where I want to change the layout of the document. Okay. So first, let me get rid of the columns that I have in there. I'm going to go ahead and undo. Let's just get that back to regular old 1 column style. Now, page breaks are great. We need them when you want to be able to break to the next page from between sections or chapters or whatever you're working with. But as you saw, adding columns, page breaks, they're just kind of ignored because your columns just continue going. So we need something very similar to a page break so I can continue that structure and create separation. But I need sections to be able to say, hey, Word, in this area, this top area, let's do columns, then break to the next page, then no columns, and then break to another page, and then do columns again. These are what are called section breaks. And specifically, I'm going to use a section page break. So first, before I insert these new breaks, these new section breaks, I'm going to get rid of the old page breaks that I have in there. So I'm just going to click to the left of my page break. I'll hit my delete key. Let's get that out of there. That'll bring my text back up again. Let's get rid of this one as well. Delete. Get rid of that as well. And now I'm just back to one column, no page breaks. I got 3 pages long. All my content there. Now, I still want to break fun with videos, working with images. I want to separate that from more options in Word. But I also want to put columns inside that top section, but not in the more options with Word section. So first, I place my mark. I'm then going to go back to page layout, back to breaks. This time I'm not going to do a page break. I'm going to do a section break called next page. Insert a section break and start a new section on that page. So I go ahead and hit that. There we go. I broke it down to the next page just like a regular old page break, but this is called a section break. Now let's do that again. Let's get down here. Let's see, this guy right here. I'm going to place my cursor there. I'll go back up to breaks. I'm going to do another section next page break. There we have it. Broke it to the next page, and I've got a section in there. Now remember, I want to do columns up here at the top. And then I want single column here. And then I want to go back to 2 columns down here. Well, let's try this. Go back to my first page. I'll click in there. Go to page layout, columns, and I'm going to grab 2. So there's my 2 columns. No surprise there. That's looking good. I got my break in there. Get down to the next page. Look at that. Single column. It didn't continue it. The columns respect the break. It's a section break. So I'm saying in this section, let's do 2 columns. So now I can go down to this section. I'll leave that set at 1 column. I'm going to go down to this section. Maybe I want to do 3 columns on this one. So I'll click into this page, back up to page layout, columns, and I'll do 3. Got 3 columns there. That looks great. Single column here, 2 columns here. All by using a break, but in this case, a section next page break. This allows you to be more flexible with the layout of your pages, breaking pages and using columns where needed and how you need them within each of those sections. So try this out, experiment with it. That's really where you're going to start to nail this down and start to learn these concepts. Jump into there, insert, get rid of the old page breaks first. That's number 1. But then start adding in your section next page breaks and then get into those sections and manipulate the columns within those sections. Try it out. So this is coming out nicely. We've got all these various techniques to help you change the dynamics of your content, of the layout of that content. You got margins, you got page breaks, you got columns, you got section breaks, and you can use columns and section breaks together to create even more dynamic layouts in your document. Let's take a look at another technique here. And this is also one that we're going to tie back into section breaks as well. And I think you're really going to like this one. It's a kind of a lesser known feature. Not a lot of people are aware of it. But once you start to master it, you can create some very dynamic, very versatile document layouts within your Word environment. Take a look. First thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to undo some of the stuff I did earlier. I'm going to get rid of these section breaks. So remember, you turn on that paragraph marker, that show hide button. I'm going to get rid of the section breaks, so I'll delete that. I think I got 2 of them in here. Oh, there was the other one. Let's go delete that one as well. All right, let's get rid of the column. So now I got 3 columns everywhere. I'm going to go back up to page layout, columns, and I'll go back to 1 column. All right, there we go. So something else you can do with the layout of your document is change the orientation of the pages. Default, you have a portrait sheet of paper. If I zoom out here, I'll control key and use my middle mouse wheel. You see I'm in portrait mode. I've got much more space up and down, right, than I do have left and right. Well, I can change that. Perhaps I want to take that sheet of paper and I want to rotate it on its side and put it into what's called landscape mode. So I can go up to page layout, I can go over to orientation, and I'm going to change it to landscape. So now I've got much more space or a wider sheet of paper than I have up and down. Landscape mode. Just two options, page layout, orientation, portrait, or landscape. Now typically, most common, portrait mode. But perhaps you've got a table or an image that doesn't fit wide across the page, or it looks better presentation wide if I were to change that sheet from portrait to landscape and fit that table on there or that image on there or whatever content it is. So I could go back to orientation, I could change it to landscape. It's great. Maybe that's what your document needs and every page needs to be that way. But it does it to every single page in the document. Right? Every page is now in landscape mode, which could be a good thing once again. But I want most of my document to be in portrait mode, and then I have those few pages that I want to flip for that image or that table or that chart, whatever it might be. But only a few pages out of a whole bunch of pages. Well, in steps, sections. Remember the section break, the next page section break. We can insert them in, and then we can manipulate just that section. Watch this. I'm going to zoom back in here. I'll use the same places. I'm going to say more options in Word. Back to page layout breaks, and I'll put in a next page section break. There we go. Now let's try something else out here. Let's put in another one here. I'm going to put one in right there. I'll go put in another next page section break. And let's see. Right before this one, I'm going to hit my enter key just to drop that down. I'm going to insert an image. So I'm going to go to insert. I'm going to do an online picture. And let's see if I can find a good one here once this thing loads up for me. So I'll go search for, I'm going to type in map. See what I get back with that. Alright, cool. There we go. There's a world map for me. So I'll go ahead and select that. I'm going to insert that in. Let's drop that bad boy in there. Alright. Now this image, I'm anticipating that, you know what, it would probably look better if I were able to take that portrait page once again and change it to landscape and then increase the size of that image so I can fit more of that landscape orientation. Alright, let's try this out. So I'm going to get back to my first page. Remember I inserted a section break there. Maybe I want that to be portrait. That looks good. This one though, I want to change this one. I want to make this landscape. So I'll click into this page. This is page 2. I'm going to go back to page layout. I'll change the orientation to landscape. There we go. Look at that. First page portrait, second page landscape. Same document. Same document. I've just changed it. Let's see if I keep going. Oh, now it's just continue. Oh, I got another section break in there. So I've got the second and third page in landscape mode, but then I've got this one here in portrait mode. So I could grab this one and I can increase the size of the image now, get that to fill up more of that landscape page. Nice, that's looking good. Very cool. So I'm adding in the breaks, but not just any old page break. It's a section next page break, just like we were talking about columns earlier. But now I'm able to manipulate the orientation and have both portrait and landscape in the same document. Okay? What I see, actually, people that aren't aware of this feature, I'll get them bringing in documents which are actually in landscape and portrait, but it's two separate Word documents. Then they just print them out and kind of collate them together after they've been printed. Two different documents, right? Well, but with section breaks, you can do it all within one document. manipulate all your layout per section. Pretty slick. Try this out. Bring in some sections. Actually, even before you do the sections, just try toggling the button for orientation. Manipulate it. Go from portrait to landscape. And then get a bit more advanced with it. Create more dynamic fluid or structure to the layout of your document by changing the orientation within different sections. Try it out. Back in the beginning of this section of this course, we were talking about margins, manipulating the left and the right margins, and we also had the top and bottom margin of your page. Now you recall I mentioned that top and that bottom margin are reserved space for your header and your footer. I've got the same example file open in front of you. Up at the top, I've got that 1-inch area inside there where I want to put my header. Maybe it's something like the page or the report name, the document name. Maybe it's my name could go up there, the creator of the document. Maybe it's the logo, your company logo or your team logo or whatever it is you're putting up there. And then you've got the footer. Again, got that 1-inch space down at the bottom where I could put things like the page number, the date, maybe it says confidential, internal use only. Now, whatever we want to have show up on every or potentially every page of your document. The header and the footer, top and bottom of your page. These are really simple to insert. Take a look. Here I am. I've got the example file just left over from the previous lecture. I'm just going to double click into that open area. And I'm now up inside the header. Now I should actually show off something here. I'm going to go ahead and close this. You'll notice I got a new tab called Header Footer Tools with the Design tab. I'm going to close it for just a moment. So I want to show something off here. Sometimes this happens to people and you get in here, it's like, nah, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't see that. Well, if I move to the top of the page, see how I got that kind of double-headed arrow looking thing? If I double click, it hides the header area and it hides the footer area. It gives you just a little bit more space on the page. Perhaps you're focusing in on the document, don't care about the header footer, you just want the document's content. Well, for me, I'm going to bring it back. So I'll move back to the top of that page. I'm going to double click again and it'll bring it back. So it's something I want to show off because it happens by accident, and sometimes you get a document and it's like that. Somebody's turned it off. No big deal. Just double click again, get up there at the top, double-headed arrow, double click, and it'll bring it right back. Okay, enough of that. So again, I'm going to double click up there, top of my page into the header, and this opens up the design tools, and it's got all sorts of stuff that we could put into your header or even the footer. You got stuff like the date and time, document info, there's loads of stuff in here. We could put in the author's name, your name, the file path, which is great. If you ever print something out or somebody prints something out, it's like, oh, I found some errors in here, some typos or whatever. We need to go back and fix that. Where's that document at? Huh. Well, you can put the file path on there, and now everybody knows it's on the Z drive, it's in this folder, and so on. So you got all sorts of goodies in there you could bring in. Put in pictures in there, or you can just type. You can bang on your keyboard, you can place content into your header. So let's say, for example, I'm just going to say, this is my header, and I'm super excited about it. And you could format that. I'll make it bold, Control B, I'll go to my Home tab, change the color, and do whatever I need to, and I can put content into that header. Now, if I double click someplace empty, or not empty, but someplace outside of that header, double click, it'll bring me back to editing the document. My header's up there, and I go through the rest of the pages, and that text now shows up on every page within the document. Done. You print this out, and that's consistent, right? Maybe I want to put page numbers inside the footer. So I'll scroll to the bottom of a page, double click at the bottom, brings me into the footer, and now I can go back to design, and I can insert things like the page number. I want to do the bottom of the page, and I want to put it right in the middle. So I'll do this plain number 2. There we have it. So page number 1 in there. And if I scroll through, there's page number 2, page number 3, and page number 4. Done. I've added it to the footer. and it's updated every page. And I could do other things inside of here as well. Let's get back up there. Here's my footer. I want to point something out here. I put that in the middle of the page. Up here on the ruler top of my screen, we haven't talked about these yet. We're going to talk about this much more in depth in a later lecture. But we've got these little tick marks. I've only got 2 of them right here in the middle, just beyond the 3, about 3¼ inches, and I got it roughly about 6½ inches there. These are called tab stops. Typically, inside of Excel, when you tap the tab key on your keyboard, you move ½ inch. Let me just show this off here really quick. If I come up here, hit my tab key, it moves it in ½ inch. ½ inch, ½ inch. Every time I hit the tab key, ½ inch. Well, these tab stops tell Word how far it should move and the alignment based on when you hit your tab key. So if I do this, if I click to the right of that number 1 and hit my tab key, again, normally it would take you ½ inch, but this time it's going to jump me all the way over to the side of the page. See how much further that was? It actually didn't go all the way over to that mark. I gotta imagine it's probably because I told it to put it in the middle of the page, keep that number there. Something about that there, but it did move me more than that half an inch typical movement. But it's all based on these markings that are happening inside the ruler. Now, if I want to put something over there, again, I tab over, and I'm just going to put my name. My name is Super Awesome, right? Now that shows up, if I close out of the header footer, that now shows up on every page within the document. There it is. Header footer. Add it in there, get those consistent elements, right? Always there. Show up at the top of your page, show up at the bottom of the page. Try this out. Again, all I did was open up the document, double click up at the top. You can bang away on your keyboard. You can insert content into your footer as well. Remember, you got the new design tab there. There's all sorts of stuff up here. We haven't talked about all of it yet, but you've got page numbers you can put inside there. You got date and times. You got some document info. You can put your logo in there. Got all sorts of stuff that you can place into your header and footer of your documents. The next time you get into the office and you start getting in documents from coworkers and books that you read, take a look at the footer. What's in there? What are some common things that you'd have show up inside the header footer? And if you get some ideas, try this. Jump into the QA section of this course and share with us what are some of the different things that you've seen show up inside of a header or footer of your Microsoft Word documents. So try this out. All right, let's take a look at one more topic in this page layout section. This isn't so much page layout as it is page formatting. We're going to take a look at adding elements to the background of your page. We're going to swap to a new tab inside of Word. I've been working on the page layout tab for changing the layout of your page, which makes sense. It's called page layout, right? Just to the left of it, you got a tab called Design. On the far left, you've got your page background and 3 options. They're pretty straightforward. You got watermarks, you got background page color, and you got page borders. Something that can go around that page. I've seen people use those borders for printing out things like certificates. You complete a course, you want a certificate for the course, they put that little fancy kind of flowery looking border around the edge or whatever type of border. But 3 little options here to be able to change the background of your document. So I'm going to use a watermark, perhaps one of the more traditional type backgrounds that you would add to a document. So I'm going to watermark, and they got some predefined ones in here, confidential, kind of slanted, as well as straight across, do not copy, same deal. And you got some options down below as well. I'm going to do confidential. I'll just grab that. So this drops in just those words, confidential right there, right into the background of the document. Right? And I could print that out. People are going to see that. This is confidential, right? Don't print this. Don't take it outside. You know, whatever you're going to do with it. Don't photocopy it. Whatever. But that's just one of the defaults. Do not copy, confidential. You can go out to more watermarks on office.com. You can create a custom watermark. If I give that a click, give it a moment, it's going to open up a window here for me where I can customize my own message. So I can even do pictures in the background, or I can change the text. Let's just say I always want to be top secret. Is there an A in there? There's no A in there, huh? My spelling's horrible. But I'll go ahead and hit apply. I'll close it. And now it says top secret. You can see it just a little bit there on the background of my screen. Let's zoom out some. There we go. And that'll show up on every page within my document. Now you've also got page colors where you can change the colors of your pages. And like I said, you got some background borders that you can put into there as well. Worth your time. Poke around and see what you can do, but adding an element to the background. I'd say once again, most common, most traditional, going to be a watermark. You can pick from the defaults, or you can customize it as well and place your own watermark there. So, try this out. It's really simple. A couple little options. It's all up on your design tab.